Welcome to the T-Pac Arcade. Today's game is Vattle Giuce for the Nintendo Game Boy. In this 1991 shoot-'em-up from IGS, you're on an intergalactic mission to defeat an evil space knight from an unknown star. And on a mission to pronounce the title of this game correctly, which might prove just as difficult as defeating an evil space knight. Anyway, Vattle Guess has 5 levels of space blasting fun, each with a mid-boss and an end-boss that appear after the scrolling inexplicably speeds up to signal your impending battle. The stages themselves are pretty straightforward, but what makes the gameplay of Vattle Grouch unique is the altitude switching mechanic. While one action button fires your blaster, the other allows you to switch between high altitude to attack flying enemies, or low altitude to attack ground enemies. Unfortunately, all enemy bullets can hurt you at any altitude, which doesn't seem too fair, but dodging literally everything is always a good idea in shoot-'em-ups anyway. And speaking of which, you have to be mindful to dodge the terrain when you switch to the low altitude, because it'll severely drain your life bar if you run into it, which means flying high is a safer bet most of the time. That being said, you do have to dip down every once in a while, because you can only get power-ups by blasting ground turrets. Or rather, you can only release power-ups by blasting ground turrets. For some reason, you still have to switch back to high altitude to actually collect them. Question marks give you a random power-up, E items restore your energy bar, S items increase your speed, and P items upgrade your cannon, which will fire differently depending on which of the 3 selectable ships you're using. The default ship gets a forward spread shot at full power, the second ship gets side cannons, and the third ship gets a backward spread shot. Side note, the ship selection screen seems to feature a surprisingly risque anime girl who may or may not be wearing any clothes behind that display board. I hope I'm just misinterpreting the low-fidelity 8-bit graphics here, but I'm also well aware of the blatant misogyny in 90s game development, which was Vattle gross. In any case, I found the default ship was the most useful in almost every stage. Level 1 is an alien landscape full of shiny orbs, where you fight several flavors of enemy spacecraft, and a single flavor of ground cannon. Unless you count the end boss, who's basically a wall of cannons. Would that be multiple flavors or multiple instances of a single flavor? Yeah, I don't know. Level 2 suggests that distant planets somehow share our own Native American culture, considering there are aboriginal arrowheads and totem poles everywhere. The mid-boss is a bit of a departure, considering it's some kind of mechanical asterisk, but the end boss is yet another giant totem pole, who, like most bosses in this game, circles spastically around the playfield. Level 3 is a crater-filled moon, where you dodge missiles that fly in threes, and fight an orb who wants to trap you between its 2 hemispheres like a spaceship sandwich. Here, the end boss is a sorta robot tank with a glass brain enclosure. For some reason, it kinda reminds me of a 70s jukebox, which is Vattle groovy. Level 4 is a ravaged landscape with more 2-half enemies that want to turn you into a spaceship sandwich, plus a mid-boss who looks like a big ol' candy wrapper of death, in contrast to the much more stereotypical spacecraft end boss, which is more or less an extra-large version of your own starship. And finally, level 5 is the Space Castle, complete with towers, parapets, and battlements. Or should I say, battlements. Sorry. The standard sci-fi enemies don't exactly fit in seamlessly with the medieval aesthetics here, but the final boss fight against the Space Knight works perfectly. And speaking of aesthetics, Vattle Gouch certainly has its ups and downs. The sprite designs are all neat, but aside from your own ship, they come off as a bit lackluster from being so static. I mean, they move around the playfield, but the pixel art itself typically doesn't change at all. That being said, the backgrounds are still cool, and I really like how the first and last level invert a lot of the tones to have white outlines on dark fills. Sweet. I also like all the chiptunes here, although the sound effects on top of them could be a bit confusing, since item pickups make the sort of noise you'd typically associate with taking damage. Aside from the altitude switching, the most novel aspect of Vattle Gattle is how the power-ups work. Namely, how the speed-ups seem to actually wear off over time, and how the cannon upgrades increase your range of fire, but decrease your rate of fire. Both of these things work in favor of balancing the game though, so I can't complain. Especially because Vattle Gouch isn't too difficult to begin with. It has unlimited continues, and the challenge doesn't really ramp up until the final 2 rounds. Admittedly, I did use a save state to replay the final boss without going through the whole final level again, but I probably could have won without cheating if I was a little more patient. Or at least that's what I like to tell myself. So overall, Vattle Giuce is a shining example of a game that's more difficult to say than it is to play, and whether you're feeling low or flying high, it'll certainly give you a Vattle good time.